In the rugged peaks of the Rocky Mountains, where the air bit like a promise of isolation, Elena Ramirez stood before a weathered sign that read for sale, $5. The cabin it pointed to was a forgotten relic, its logs sagging under decades of snow and neglect, tucked away on a forgotten trail in Colorado's high country. Elena, a woman forged by the mountains themselves, tall, with calloused hands from years of guiding hikers and wrangling livestock, had stumbled upon it during one of her solitary treks. At 45, life had worn her down like river stones, a divorce that left her penniless, a daughter estranged in the city, and a heart heavy with the weight of unshared burdens. $5? It was a joke, or perhaps a mercy from some absent owner. She fished out the crumpled bill from her pocket, nailed it to the signpost with a rusty tack, and pushed open the creaking door. What she found inside froze her blood colder than any blizzard. She wasn't alone. A massive mountain lion, its golden fur matted and as gleaming in the dim light, lay cold in the corner, a low growl rumbling like distant thunder. Elena's breath caught in her throat. Mountain lions were legends in these parts, elusive predators that ruled the wild with silent grace. She heard stories from old-timers, attacks on livestock, rare but fatal encounters with humans. Her hand instinctively reached for the hunting knife at her belt, but something stayed her. The beast didn't lunge, it didn't bare its fangs in fury. Instead, it shifted weakly, revealing a gash along its flank, crusted with blood and dirt. And there, nestled against its side, were two tiny cubs, no bigger than house cats, mewling softly in the chill. Elena's shock thought into a profound realization: this wasn't a monster invading her new home, it was a mother, desperate and cornered, protecting her young in the only shelter she could find. Back in her youth, Elena had been the kind of woman who turned heads in the small town of Ridgeview. Born to Mexican immigrants who worked the mines, she learned early that survival meant blending strength with quiet endurance. She married young, to a man who promised adventure but delivered only disappointment. Their daughter, Sofia, grew up amid arguments that echoed like avalanches, until one day Sofia packed her bags for college in Denver and never looked back. "You're too tied to these mountains, Mom," she'd said. "They'll bury you." Elena had laughed it off, but the words stung. Now, buying this cabin for a pittance felt like a final act of defiance, or surrender. She craved solitude, a place to mend her fractured spirit away from pitying eyes. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. As the sun dipped low, casting long shadows through the cabin's cracked windows, Elena backed away slowly, her heart pounding. She could call wildlife services. They'd relocate the lion or, worse, euthanize it if it was too injured. But something in the animal's eyes, a weary plea, perhaps, mirrored her own exhaustion. Kindness wasn't a luxury she'd afforded herself much lately. Selflessness? That was for saints, not broken women scraping by. Yet, as she retreated to her truck parked a mile down the trail, memories flooded her abuela, back in the old pueblo, nursing stray dogs and orphan birds, whispering, "La humanidad se mide por cómo tratamos a los débiles. Humanity is measured by how we treat the weak." Elena shook her head. This was no stray dog, this was a wildcat that could rip her apart. That night, in a motel room in Ridgeview, Elena couldn't sleep. The image of the lion haunted her, majestic yet vulnerable, a queen dethroned by circumstance. She researched on her battered phone: mountain lions rarely attack humans unprovoked, especially mothers with cubs. The wound looked fresh, perhaps from a poacher's trap or a territorial fight. But down, an unexpected turn gripped her: what if she helped? It was madness, but the pull was undeniable. She gathered supplies: antiseptic from the pharmacy, raw meat from the butcher, even a tranquilizer dart borrowed from a skeptical vet friend who owed her a favor. "You're crazy, Elena," he said. "That thing'll kill you." But she saw it differently: in saving the lion, she might save a piece of herself. Returning to the cabin under a steel gray sky threatening snow, Elena approached with caution. The door was ajar, just as she'd left it. Inside, the lion lifted her head, ears flattening, but no growl this time, only a watchful stare. The cubs huddled closer, their tiny bodies shivering. Elena's hands trembled as she set down a bowl of water laced with mild sedative, mixed with the meat. "Easy, girl," she murmured, her voice steady despite the fear. "I'm not here to hurt you." Hours passed in tense vigil outside, peeking through the window. The lion sniffed the offering, then lapped it up warily. Soon, her eyelids drooped, and she slumped into a drugged slumber. This was the moment of profound realization for Elena. Stepping into the cabin, not sheathed, she knelt beside the beast. Up close, the lion was breathtaking, muscles rippling under fur, paws the size of dinner plates. The wound was infected, pus oozing from a deep laceration. Elena worked quickly, cleaning it with antiseptic, applying a makeshift bandage from her first aid kit. The cubs watched with wide eyes, one bold enough to bat at her boot. Touching the lion's fur felt like touching wildfire, dangerous, alive. As she finished, the sedative began to wear off, and the lion stirred. Elena backed away, heart in her throat, but instead of attack, the animal merely blinked, then licked her wound with a rough tongue, as if acknowledging the aid. Days blurred into a fragile routine. Elena camped outside the cabin, bringing food and checking the wound's progress. The lion, whom she named Sierra after the mountains, grew stronger, her growls softening to rumbling purrs. The cubs ventured out, tumbling in the snow like furry snowballs, their playfulness a balm to Elena's soul. Unexpected turns came in waves. One night, a storm howled in, burying the trail in white. Elena sought shelter inside, and Sierra didn't protest. Instead, she shifted to make space by the cold hearth. They shared the warmth, woman and wildcat, an unlikely alliance born of mutual need. But the emotional climax loomed on the horizon. Word spread in Ridgeview about Elena's crazy cabin and soon, a ranger named Tom arrived, tipped off by the vet. "Ma'am, you can't harbor a mountain lion. It's illegal, dangerous." He stood at the door, rifle slung over his shoulder, eyes widening at the sight of Sierra and her cubs. Elena's pulse raced. This was it, the moment her act of compassion could unravel. "She's hurt, Ranger. Just needs time to heal. Please, give her that." Tom hesitated, his stern face softening as he watched the cubs nuzzle Elena's leg. In that instant, generosity sparked. Tom, a father himself, saw the humanity in her plea. 1 week, he conceded. But if she attacks anyone, it's over. That week tested Elena's selflessness to its core. Sierra's wound healed, but poachers, drawn by rumors of a tame lion, lurked in the woods. One evening, as dusk fell, Elena heard shots ring out. Rushing outside, she found Sierra cornered by 2 men with traps and guns. Without thinking, Elena charged forward, shouting, waving her arms. "Get away from her." A bullet whizzed past, grazing her arm, but she didn't falter. Sierra roared, leaping to Elena's side, not to attack but to stand guard, her presence a shield. The poachers fled, terrified by the united front. In the aftermath, bloodied and breathless, Elena collapsed against Sierra, tears streaming. "You saved me," she whispered. But it was mutual, their bond had transformed fear into fierce loyalty. As spring thawed the mountains, Sierra led her cubs into the wild, vanishing like a dream. Elena stood at the cabin door, a mix of sorrow and joy swelling in her chest. The experience had mended more than a wound, it had reignited her spirit. She reached out to Sophia, sharing the story over a crackling phone line. "Mom, that's incredible," Sophia said, voice choked. "I'm coming home." The cabin, once a symbol of despair, became a sanctuary. Elena turned it into a small wildlife haven, educating locals on coexistence with nature, her tale inspiring rangers, hikers, and even schoolkids across Colorado. In the end, Elena's journey reminded her, and those who heard it, that kindness isn't a weakness but a force that bridges worlds. A single act of selflessness can heal the wild within us all, proving that humanity's true power lies in compassion, even toward the fiercest hearts. And in the vast American landscape, where mountains meet the sky, hope endures, one unexpected bond at a time.